all of you once again. Welcome to our study on the book of Esther, right? And the theme is on the providence of God. And today we will look at a lesson which I entitled The Rage of Another Beast. Okay, we have had introduction to the book of Esther in lesson 1, where the lesson 2 was Beauty and the Beast, and lesson 3 was Beauty Meets the Beast. Okay, and now we haven't actually finished Esther chapter 2 yet, so I will go through it in this particular lesson and then part of Esther 3 as well. For those of us who have just joined us, again, welcome. I saw Sister Swanti joining us as well, just before I show my screen. So, all right. So if you have your Bible, just turn to Esther, right? And we will do a quick recap, right? And we know that the overall theme of this is the providence of God, right? The providence of God. And it was John Piper who wrote a whole book, 184 pages, I think, or even more than that, right? On this word, providence. And he just released it. And if you haven't been able to download a free copy, go ahead and download one. Yeah, Zach has given us the link to it. So, but here it is, right? We are in our present situation, not by chance, not by coincidence, but by the hand of God. And what a powerful truth it is if we know this, so that our life, our every day, we can rise up with purpose. We can rise up with an exciting thing, with excitement to see what God is doing. That we can pray that God may open our eyes to see His hand at work, right? So we will come to this verse later along the series where Esther was confronted with this challenge. He said that who knows that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this, and that time was a very critical time that we are going to look at, time permitting today, right? The providence of God. So remember the 3 Ds, right? And we're still on the first part, which is the danger to God's people, right? The danger to God's people. And then later on in chapter 4, that we'll see the decision of God's servant. And then finally, we'll see the deliverance of God's people. So essentially, it's given up to 3 major parts. Okay? 3 major parts. You're familiar with this, right? And the story so far, all right, if you're thinking about an act, right, this is probably the first act, okay, where you talk about the danger to God's people. We've seen the drunkenness of Xerxes, okay, of King Ahasuerus, right, and in his drunkenness, right, he commanded his queen to come and present herself to show off her beauty, and Vashti, being to preserve her dignity, all right, defied the king, the defiance of Vashti. She said no, right? She will not be that trophy wife in today's term. She will not display her beauty, right, for the lust of the eyes of the king's drunkard guests, right? So with that defiance result in her divorce, right? And King Xerxes actually is, on the advice of his minister Memucan, just basically says, all right, I'm going to issue this decree that Vashti is not to come into the king's presence anymore, right? And she will be demoted. The title of the queen will be taken away from her, and then the decree will go out to the whole the kingdom that all the women must, respect the husbands, right? And this is a bit of a kind of, you look at it, they're trying to legislate respect, which is actually quite foolhardy. So it was a very foolish decision caused out of the drunkenness and the pride of Xerxes as well. But that event set the stage for the discovery of Esther. And that's where we started looking at it last week. And today we will look from chapter 2, verse 16 onwards, right? And then this will be followed by the devotion of Mordechai, and then we will look at the defiance of Mordechai, and then we see the decree of Haman, right, coming up. I don't know how much time we can, how much material we can cover, but we'll try our best to continue on with that. All right. So I touched briefly on this particular passage last week, but let's look at this again. And chapter 2, verse 12, it says, before a woman's turn came to King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments, okay, prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months, 6 with perfumes and cosmetics. So it's a dream for the ladies, right? Okay, 6 months, okay. Husbands, if we are watching, right, think about that. And how can we pamper our wives with 6 months of beauty treatment, right? 12 months of beauty treatment. But this is how she would go to the king. Anything that she wanted was given her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. And in the evening, she would go there, and in the morning, return to another part of the harem to the care of, there's another eunuch, Shafkas, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. So I covered a little bit of it, but I want to pick up the observation. We see that the contest rules is this. The contestant must be young, a virgin, and a beautiful female. But the observation here is, when we talk about the beauty treatment, it is actually comes from the implication is to scour, to scrub, like what the ladies would use to scrub the skin and to polish, right? So there are two things that we can observe there. Is number one is, why do they mention about why 6 months, And to understand this, we can see that all the young ladies come from various provinces, from the 127 provinces, from the Sahara Desert right to the borders of India, in that way. So many of them are desert, right? So they probably have some skin conditions and diseases and so on and so forth. So the idea here is this treatment would basically help them repair their skin, right? And myrrh is also very effective in treating certain skin diseases and all those things. And myrrh, we know, is used in perfume, in incense, as well as a wound dressing as well. So no surprise, right? No surprise that those in charge of the ladies, right, the eunuchs, really know what they're talking about. They are the beauty clinicians or consultants of the day, right? Then the second one is the next 6 months. It is actually, they call it, is used to the perfumes and other things that to enhance the natural beauty of the ladies. And okay, that's the second aspect, right? And the third thing that we see is they can take whatever they need. Okay, they request from anything from the harem. So as when they go to spend one night with the king, right? They can do that to win the king's affection. So anything they want, their heart's desire. But then they have to be patient, because after spending that night with the king, then they will have to go to another section of the harem, and they have to wait there until the 400, right? Yeah, 400 ladies have gone through their turn, right? 400. That's more than a year of waiting. Okay? It's more than a year of waiting. Yeah, whether you're first in line or the last in line, right? So studying history and the background of it gives us a bit of insight, right? So question is, okay, is for us to think, how do you feel about our modern beauty pageants? Do you see that is there any relevance to what they all right? Some have pros, some have cons. So sometimes we see that some of the ladies, because they come from a rather obscure background, but they manage to, when they participate in beauty pageants, they manage to get some exposure, and they manage to make their way up in society, right? Opportunities are open to them. But unfortunately, some modern beauty pageants, right, they also dehumanize or objectify the contestants. So these are pros and cons that you may want to maybe wrestling with when you talk about beauty pageants as well. right? So, but Esther was subjected to this, right? And it was required of her, but she went through it in person, right? Verse 15, it says, when the turn, this is chapter 2, verse 15, when the turn came for Esther, the young woman Mordechai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch who was in charge of that harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. And she was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence. And in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And this is the amazing thing. We know that from here we say Esther is fairly young, all right, and this is one of the requirements. But you look at the way that this passage talks about. She was not demanding in character, right? She asked for nothing other than what Haggai suggested. And she's a smart girl from here, you know. Haggai, who had served the king for so many years, a trusted person, would know what the king really liked or don't like, you know. And because she already won favor with Haggai gave her the tips. This is what you should do. This is how you should say. This is how you should act. This is, you know, conduct yourself. Now, this is what the king likes. This is what the king doesn't like. You know, and she took it in. You know, she took it in. But the amazing thing is also not only she won the favor of Haggai, but she won the favor of everyone who saw her. So verse 17 says the king was attracted to Esther more than any other woman, and she won his favor and approval. 3 times we see the word Esther winning favor, not only among her peers, not only among the servants. There was mutual respect. She did not treat the eunuchs as somebody subhuman or just somebody to as a stepping stone, but there is this respect of him as a person, right? Yeah, and as an esteemed servant of the king. Right? But she also won the king's favor and approval, right? More than any other virgin. So that's where she said. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. Wow, another round of party, right? And he proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. Again, here, a few lessons we can look at it. I mentioned that she won favor, right? 3 times. So you see that in her character, she's consistent. She's gracious to all, right? So we don't put one face, with one group of person and then change our face to deal with another group of person. Is your behavior and my behavior consistent with everyone? You know, whether we deal with our workers, okay, or those who for example, you know, like in the church, we have got people coming in to sweep, right? Do we treat them well? Do we greet them when we come to church and see them? You know, waiting to sanitize the premises in between our services. Do we treat them well, or are they invisible to us? So from the servants to her peers, right, to the fellow 400 contestants, right, and to the officials at the court, and to the king. So she was consistent, she was gracious to all. And we also see her character. She was humble, she was wise, she was trusting, she was not greedy, right? She says, I want this from the harem. I want to do all this, you know, thing, you know. She was not manipulative. And she's not proud to receive and act on the advice of those who are elder than him. Those that God, in his providence, had put in authority over her. She trusted, right? She trusted, especially in the courts and especially in the midst of competition, right? You know, it's so easy to become cynical, but yet Esther, you know, maintained the purity of her heart. So she acted on the advice of those in the know. First, she kept her identity secret, right, on the advice of Mordechai. And secondly, she acted on the advice of the guy that you know. And that's where she found favor, with men. So the lesson point here, we can, I think it points out to us is, let us continue to develop a character and our inner beauty, right? Okay. And for the ladies, I think it was Peter's what do you call this command to say that when he was actually in this context, he was talking about the Christian women who came to know the Lord, of course, after they're married, but their husbands yet do not know the Lord, right? Are not yet Christian. So his encouragement is this: wives, in the same way, submit yourself to your husband, so that there is a purpose, that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over with words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and the reverence of your lives. And I've heard one testimony about someone who do not yet know the Lord, but then later on, because when he saw how Christ had changed the life of his wife after she became a Christian, then he began to trust and trust himself to the Lord as well. So this is a command that works, right? When they see the purity and reverence of your lives, your beauty should not come from the outward adornment, but rather, okay, it goes and elaborate it, but rather it should come from that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. So she had this imperishable quality, whether she thinks or not, it doesn't matter. All right, her confidence doesn't rely on things around her. All right, and many times it's so easy for us to put our security. We get insecure when we lose things, or when we feel that we don't have enough things. Right, her confidence is in herself, in the sense that she grew up in the knowledge of the Lord. Right, so surely here, right. Okay, so something else attracted the king, right? So remember, she's among the cream of the cream, right? So she's among 400 young, beautiful ladies of various, of skills and of attractiveness and of, all kinds of talents, right? And they are trained there for 1 year. They're trained to win the king's heart, right? So Esther is no different in one sense, but yet something else stood out. And this is where I believe that, God has a hand in it, right? In the Lord's hand, Proverbs 21 verse 1, right? The king's heart is as a stream of water that the Lord channels towards all who please him. I believe that Esther pleased the Lord first through her who she is, her gentleness, her graciousness, her humility, her wisdom, everything, right? How he honors Mordechai, and it's not something that's overnight. It's something that she grew up with, even though she was an orphan, right? So, like sometimes we may complain about our past, but how we see our past can, and how we allow our past to shape us positively, even though we lack. She lacked parents, right? Natural parents. God has placed her in her life an adoptive father who loved her. So that's the beauty of her inner self. Right? So something attracted the king in her. So the result, of course, of Esther's promotion is everybody gets blessed because the king is happy as well. So that's a little bit of. So now we come, as we look at the discovery of Esther, now we come to this part where we talk about the devotion of Mordechai. And this continues on in Esther chapter 2, verse 19. It says, when the virgins were assembled a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, but Esther had kept secret her family background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do. For she continued to follow Mordecai's instruction as she had done when he was bringing her up. So during the time that Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. Right? It's a bit of an irony. The ones who were supposed to guard the king turned to be would-be assassin. Yeah. So these are the twists and turns, right, of the story, which makes the story of Esther fascinating. What can we observe? A few things about Mordecai. Number one, it's noted that he was sitting at the king's gate, verse 19. Right? It says when the virgins were assembled a second time. So maybe it could be, like this, like after the contestants in the beauty pageant has gone through one by one, they have a final round whereby they get them to walk through again. Everybody gather for a final viewing. That's possible, right? For a final viewing by the king, right? Before the king then announce the winner, right? That's possible. So it could be possible that Mordecai then was very anxious about what's happening to Esther, whether she'll be selected or not, or whether she will have to remain for the rest of her life in the harem, right? Maybe ignored by the king, right? So she, you see this part of his devotion, right? His devotion to his adopted daughter Esther, right? So he continued. That could be possible. He was maintaining vigilance at the king's gate. But the other aspect could be because could be that he was in an official capacity. That there are when you talk about at the king's gate, right? We have read, for example, Proverbs 31. You know that the husband of the woman would sit among the elders at the gates of the city. As an example, this is a place whereby transactions are conducted, are sealed, right? Contracts are sealed and judgments are made, right? So it is possible that that he was acting as in some kind of official capacity in the king's court, and that's where he had to make judgments and he was in some sort of official capacity. But whatever it is, right? So we see that Mordecai was at the right place at the right time. The second aspect of it is we see, of course, Esther, it is recorded, continued to follow Mordecai's instruction, verse 20. And this is amazing. And by this time, it was said that she was Queen Esther, right? So the change in her status did not affect who she is inwardly. Her true essence of herself and her esteem of Mordecai, her respect for Mordecai, right? So in that sense, he's talking about honor your father and mother, and you may live long in the land that God, the Lord your God, is giving you. So there is no expiration date for the fifth commandment, right? We never outgrow this. Okay, whether we have a new home, which Esther has, a new status that's in marriage, did not change who she is, right? She continued to respect, she continued to honor her father, and that pleases the Lord as well. Okay? So that's number one. We see the Mordecai's devotion to his daughter, but we also see Mordecai's devotion to the king as well, right? Remember, Mordecai was now a fourth generation Jew, right? So there have been, since the exile from Judah, right? It's been about 150 plus 159 years that the Jews were already in the land, right? Scattered, all throughout the empire. Now, first the Assyrian, and then the Babylonian, and now the Medes, and then the Persian Empire, right? So verse 22 says, but Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. And when the report was investigated and found to be true, the two officials were impaled on poles. And all this was recorded in the book of the annals in the presence of the king. Right? Okay, so this is what turned out. He reported, right? He found out about the danger to the king, yeah, and then he told Esther, and Esther told the king, right? And then there was an investigation, and the two officials or the two guards were executed, right? Pretty, pretty, quite what about it? Gory story, okay, in that way, right? So what else can we observe? He was at the right place and at the right time, right? So we can see the hand of God in this story. Right? Just waiting there, and then he was just happened to overhear the two guards talking, right? And we see that it was recorded in the king's records books in the presence of the king. But strangely enough, there's no record of the king ever rewarding Mordecai here, right? Ever giving him an appreciation or acknowledgement in that way. It was only mentioned that it was recorded. I believe that this is again this oversight, is not an oversight of God, right? So sometimes we feel that things promotion may have passed us by, or we are not recognized. We seem to be relegated to be stuck in a particular place. But we take heart, right? God has not overlooked what we have done, right, for His name, right? And even our faithful witness at work or in school or in the marketplace, wherever, in our family, God has not overlooked us, right? But this will turn out for the better later on, right? When the king later on recognized, hey, Mordecai has not been awarded. So there was no record of Mordecai's achievements here. Okay? But so we see that we have to entrust, yeah, everything, right? Timing is everything in the work of God's providence, right? God will highlight, God will bring to pass, God will arrange things, everything in its proper place. So when things are not going our way, so-called, all right, yeah, don't get discouraged, yeah, be patient, just continue to trust the Lord, yeah, continue to trust the Lord. This is important, yeah. This record is important in the sense that Persian kings always record who has served them, and they will give that's their reward for loyalty, right? But here, I think a short note is this: Esther, when he received news from Mordecai, he gave, when he passed the news on to the king, he gave credit to Mordecai, right? She did not take credit for herself, right? So give credit where credit is due, right? I think this is an important principle as well, right? Don't take anything that doesn't belong to us, and shoulder the responsibilities for failures. I think that's the mark of a leader. Yeah, shoulder the responsibilities for any failures, so that we can lead your team to resolve issues together. But when credit is due, give them credit, right? So I think that will encourage us, especially for many who serve behind the scenes, right? In church, in ministry, simple things. It means a lot. A simple thank you, a simple acknowledgement, who did what, just pass, let others know what they did. They're not going to blow their own trumpet. I think God's people who are humble, but it is helpful, I believe, because when you share what another person has done, you put them in a particular position whereby they can be of help in another area of ministry, for example, or to another person. And in doing so, you are moving, I believe, you're moving them along God's purposes as well. I think that's an important aspect. Don't hold back. Don't hold back. Expose. I think if we leaders need to bring people up, that in the sense of expose them to more opportunities. So that's what Esther is. You see her leadership coming through as well. Okay? You see her leadership. What are some of the lessons that we can gather from Esther chapter 2? Okay, is this trust in God's timing. His timing is perfect. He's in complete control. So when we feel that things are not going our way, or God seems to be there has a delay, come back again to this principle. Trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord. And Mordechai and Esther, they are unlikely candidates, right? But God delights in using unlikely candidates. And you and I, we qualify. Thank God, Lord, right? Praise the Lord. So, 3 quick questions for us, as we look at Esther, to what areas do we need to trust and to obey God more? All right. For some of us, we need to trust God more. For some of us, we need to say, right, we need to obey God more in this situation. So something for you and I to reflect on. The second question is, has promotion or privilege changed you? Right? Has it changed you? Has it changed you for the better? Preferably, it's not changed us for the worse, right? But has responsibilities changed us? I think there's some of the danger, I think temptation we face as we handle more and more responsibilities is we can become more and more cynical. Yeah, we can become more and more discouraged, or we can become more depressed because of the abundant, the greater expectations. Yeah, or we can become more proud. Yeah, these are the issues related to promotion, and we start acting, as if we're a different person. So do guard our hearts. And the third one is, you think about the ladies, right? Okay, and Esther having to prepare for 1 year, right, to meet the king, right? All of us, are going to meet our King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. How is our preparation? How is our spiritual preparation? Something for us to reflect and to think about and answer as honestly as we can before the Lord. So these are just some lessons that we have from Esther chapter 2. Right? Now going on to Esther chapter 3, right, is where we look at the decree of Haman. What made this Haman so angry? We look at the rage of the beast, right? And this is where we come from. So after these things, Esther 3 chapter 1, it says, after these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman the Agagite, okay? Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, all right? And advanced him and set his throne above all the officials who were with him. So this, it just comes out of the blue. First, the promotion of Esther, and suddenly the promotion of a rival, right? In a sense, okay? Indirect rival, and suddenly become a mortal enemy, right? So of Haman, suddenly, right? So question is, how did Haman get promoted? The scripture here doesn't tell us, right? And it says after these things, yeah. So chapter 1 and 2 matter, right? After these things, right? So all the events coming matter, but it sets the stage for to counter what Haman is about to do, right? How did he get promoted? Maybe in some way, because we can see that he was a cunning man, right? Later on, right? He could have stole, and directed Mordecai's efforts, in honoring, in protecting the king, and stole some of the glory for himself. But scripture is silent in this, right? But anyway, we don't know how he got into that position, but that position was a very, very powerful position, right? And it says he sets his position above all the officials who were with him. It could be at the position of a viceroy, somebody who's second in command, yeah, a trusted person who wielded power close to the king, or in the case of later on when we see in Esther 3 that he was wielding the power of the king himself as well. He had a king's signet ring. Yeah. Okay. So how did he get promoted? Right. What is important that we don't know, but what is important that he was placed in a position to wield evil, right? And this is where we struggle. When we see certain individuals being suddenly end up in a position of authority, and we know that person is manipulative, that person is selfish, that person is whatever you call it, corrupt or whatever, we get so afraid, we get so angry, we get so frustrated, right? And we've seen dictators over the history of mankind, and Haman is one of them as well. So he had much power to cause problems. So what is important here, it says his background. It says that it's Haman the Agagite, right? So and this is the Agagite is a descendant, right, of King Agag, right? Okay, King Agag is among the king of the Amalekites, and these are the long time enemy of Israel. Way from the time when Israel left the land of slavery in Egypt, and when they were in the wilderness, the Amalekites came against them, right? And what we see here is in Deuteronomy Chapter 25, which I will show to us later, is that God commanded them. He says, when you enter into the promised land, you must destroy every one of the Amalekites. Wipe the memory off, right? Because if you don't, this is what's going to happen. Yeah. Okay, this is what's happening. All right. So let me just pop over to have a look at Deuteronomy 25. It says, remember that which Amalek did to you on the road, right? On your way out of Egypt, that he encountered you on the way and cut off those lagging to your rear when you were tired and exhausted. He did not fear God, right? And it shall come to pass when the Lord your God has given you rest from all the enemies surrounding you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess it, that you shall obliterate the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. Do not forget, right? This was Moses giving this instruction to the Israelites. This new generation of Israelites were about to go into the promised land. He says, God is going to settle you and God is going to give you peace. But remember, this is one enemy that you cannot tolerate. You must wipe them off. Because he knows that this enemy is going to come against you over and over and over again. Right? And in history, it shows that in First Samuel 15, right? King Saul had the opportunity to and was given the command to wipe off the Amalekites, but he did not. He actually spared King Agag, right? But Samuel took matters, followed God's command, killed King Agag, and actually divided him into a few portions as well. But what this is saying to us is that past sins, right, have a problematic way, right? Have a way to come back and haunt us. When we don't deal with these issues decisively, or when we commit sins in the past, right? If we don't deal with it, it will come back and cause us problems, right? So this is a complication of sin, yeah. And this is what happened in the story of Esther, because King Saul, during his reign, did not obey God. It has affected generations down the line. Okay? So this is the effect of sin. Okay, let's carry on, and then I will wrap up here. Right? Esther 3, verse 2 to 5. Now we know that the background of Haman, verse 2, it says, all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordechai did not bow down or pay homage. Right? Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordechai, why do you transgress the king's command, right? And when they spoke to him day after day, and he would not listen to them, they told Haman, in order to see whether Mordecai's words would stand, for he would have told them that he was a Jew. So this is an interesting thing. Everybody bowed down before Haman, all right, except this guy, okay, Mordecai, right? Now, Mordecai, we will see later on, he said he had no problem bowing down to the king, all right? So it's not an issue of like in the case of Daniel and his friends not bowing down to the idol, of King Nebuchadnezzar and so on and so forth, right? But he had a problem with Haman, right? And this is where we look at the defiance. Why did he not bow down to Haman? We see we had a clue here in Esther chapter 2, verse 5. It says, Mordecai was the son of Jair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, Benjamin. And what it's saying here is Mordecai was a descendant of King Saul, right? Was a Benjamin, right? And this is where the issue is. So he recognized that Haman was a descendant of a hated enemy whom God has cursed. And he refused to give in to this enemy. Right? Think about what do we give in our lives? What has God cursed? He had cursed the serpent, which is the devil, right? But do we inevitably, unconsciously give in to the devil? Or do we hate him with a vengeance and love God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, and with all our strength? Or do we compromise? This is the kind of thing that Mordecai did. He hated Haman. Now, granted, also Haman also later on hated Mordecai and the Jews, right? Back, okay. But when we look at Mordecai, right, we see that there was a lifetime of badness. His upbringing, his story of his background, right, is so important for us. As to bring up our children in the discipline, in the knowledge, in the discipline of the Lord, right? So the lifetime of discipline, of conviction, of growing in his spiritual, knowing his spiritual heritage, right, and his cultural heritage will show up at these points of crisis and decision. At these points of crisis and decision. So, what about us? Are we our time of studying the Word of God? Of exploring our different areas of faith, of making decisions, asking God to help us make decisions at the right time, at the right place. This has to be a lifetime of preparedness, right? So are we as parents, for example, preparing our children when they step out into the world, right? And they have to make decisions on their own. Do they have a foundation to stand on? Do they have principles by which they will be guided by? That's where the defiance of Mordecai comes in. And let me just wrap with this short passage, chapter 5, verse 5 onwards, which I will end with some just reflection questions for us. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down and pay homage to her, Haman was filled with fury, right? Sounds familiar, isn't it? First, the king was filled with fury, and here now Haman was filled with fury, right? But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, so that as they had made known to him the people of Mordecai, he sought to destroy all the Jews, all the people of Mordecai throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. Question is, for us to wrestle, how can people be so evil? The challenge for us is actually this: evil, and it's not beneath us. If we really check our hearts, we also have evil thoughts. It's by the grace of God and by the hand of God that restrain us from committing evil. Second question is, what are some of the prejudices we grew up with? Right? Haman has his prejudices. Mordechai has his prejudices. Right? What are some of those prejudices that we grew up with? It's interesting that that we read about the recent interview of Harry and Meghan Markle, Harry and Meghan, right? And about the skin color of their son Archie. And there were some prejudices that were coming up to play. And the third question is, what are some of the consequences of uncontrolled anger in your life, in my life? We'll explore that a little bit next round. So I'd like to leave us with this. Thank you very much for the attention, and I pray that you will spend some time, reflecting and answering those questions.